Okay, some basic principles of Jiu-Jitsu. Let's go over those. These are real simple things to keep in mind when applying the locks and doing your moves. The first one is stability. When you do a lock on somebody, not only do you want to be stable, but you want to destabilize your opponent. Because if he has his shoulders or she has his shoulders over hips, they can counter what you're doing. So it's important that you keep your shoulders over your hips. Whenever you're doing the locks, you really shouldn't be leaning over. There should be no reason to be leaning over and reaching. Your shoulders should always stay over hips as you follow your opponent. Now, you want to destabilize your opponent, and you do this by doing, let's take the outside wrist lock, which we'll explain here later in the video. Now, if I just stop this lock here, he can still hit me because I haven't really neutralized anything. He's still got equal weight with both legs. He can kick. He can still strike. I haven't neutralized any part of his body. But if I bring it down to what we call our triangulation point, which is around my belt, now he's off balance. Okay? Even if he tries to kick, he can't because there's nothing there to kick with. All his weight's over here. This arm has been neutralized because of the lock. If he tries to punch with it, all I got to do is apply more pressure. Okay? And then he just goes down. Okay, so you always want to destabilize your opponent, get them off balance. It doesn't matter what lock it is, even if you're doing this lock, okay, which is a very common lock. There again, if I leave it at this, he can still counter whatever he's doing, whatever I'm trying to do, because he's still stable, even though I've got stability. So I've got to take that away from him by applying the pressure. This is where I want my opponent. I don't want my opponent bent over, just standing there looking at the ground. Another thing to keep in mind is a base. You don't always need a base, but sometimes it's helpful. If you've got an opponent with big hands or you're just got a small person, sometimes creating a base. For example, the gooseneck, okay, like this. Okay, if I just do this, there's no pressure there. But if I create the base, which is my shoulder, and apply the pressure, he's now got more pain on him. Another thing is a Sankhya lock. If we're in the Sankhya lock here. Now, I've got small hands, so a lot of times I have trouble controlling the hand or getting them to do what I want. By creating a base, which would be my fingers here, I can now get the pressure that I'm looking for. So there's nothing wrong with adding your other hand to create that base to allow you to get the pressure on. Okay, now let's look at small circles, or what is called small circle jiu-jitsu. We base our jiu-jitsu off of Professor Wally J's system of small circle jiu-jitsu. And basically what that means is when you go to do a lock or anything, we're not using big wide arches like this or big wide circles. You want to use small tight circles, and you want to push and pull with your hand. So you're going to be using this motion. Every time you do a lock, you should have this motion or a turning handle, turning a knob kind of a motion, but it's always a push-pull, push-pull. Never just a push. You always want to push and pull. So when you do the circles, you want to do it small like this, because it's harder to defend against, and it keeps the arms locked up a lot easier. Instead of going really wide. See how wide I go? I've still not got anything locked up. Where here, I've already got everything locked up. So it's a lot quicker, it's a lot cleaner, and it's a lot smoother. So keep all of your circles, whether you're doing inside or outside, they're all really small motions. So we don't want to see this big rotation. The other thing you want to keep in mind when dealing with the locks and such is what we call sticky fingers. In other words, when you do a technique, you're always touching. You always got your hand on your opponent. Once you get a hold of an arm or a leg, you don't let it go. You've always got your hand in a position that you can go into a lock, no matter what the lock is. You can change it, you can switch it, but there's always constant sticky fingers is what Michael De Pasquale calls it. In other words, you always got your hands on them, you're always touching them. Okay, the next thing we're going to look at is loosening up your opponent. This is really important. You're not going to just come and someone's going to grab and you're just going to lock them up. Okay, it's really not going to happen quite like that. They're going to already be throwing the punch. They're already going to be doing whatever it is they plan to do in the first place. So as soon as someone grabs you, you want to loosen them up. You want to distract them. And there's several ways to do this. For a straight arm wrist grab, for example, the couple options here is if they're really gripping your hand, just hang on to it real tight. Okay? And I don't want to sit here and fight this. Okay? You don't have time. He's going to be hitting you with the other hand, or whatever he's trying to do is already going to be taking place. You don't want to sit here and get into a muscle match. What you can do, though, is by one option to distract them is just pull them down. Okay? If they're off balance, they're no longer able to maintain the concentration on this hand. Another one of my favorites is just kick them. As you go to grab the lock, you just kick. Get them off balance. Get them thinking about something else. Okay, also keep in mind when dealing with locks is the shoulder. Okay, you can't do this so much with the elbow or the rest of the hand, but on some locks like this one, you can attack the shoulder. In other words, if he tightens his arm up as tight as he can, okay, I can't move it. But if I attack the shoulder, there's nothing he can do about it. He can lock my hand up all he wants all day long, but I will always be able to attack that shoulder. On the other hand, though, if I try to do it this way, okay, he can go ahead and hang on. He can resist, okay? He can prevent me from really turning my hand over to get what I want. This would be a time when you want to use your kicks, your throat strikes, your eye strikes, whatever it is that you're trying to do to get that hand in this position so that you can do the lock. Okay, so a distraction could be anything as simple as just jerking the guy off balance or actually striking. You should usually strike or distract the guy before you do the technique. This will allow it a lot smoother and a lot easier of a run. Okay, practice those principles and then start looking, come back and we'll start working on the actual locks and takedowns.